Hello everyone, this is part 10 of what if Naruto was told about his Uzumaki genes early, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to see more, comment down below. Now Gates, she already had her fan strapped behind her. The lonesome journey towards the sand loomed large. She had accomplished her mission of coming here, and perhaps gained more than what she had expected. She certainly hadn't thought she would end up seeing Naruto, and let alone end up getting closer to him as she did. It was amazing just what a couple of days could achieve when you open yourself to someone. Perhaps it was a rare thing for Naruto to do, but Temari had enjoyed him. She had enjoyed his comfort, every part of him. The thought made her blush. "You're not thinking something naughty, are you?" Naruto asked with a wide smile on his lips. Temari shook her head. She wasn't denying what Naruto had said but trying to clear her thoughts. "You're not getting into my head," she said a bit quickly. "I wasn't trying to," Naruto said. "Just curious seeing you blush suddenly when absorbed in your thoughts." Temari didn't indulge Naruto by responding to him. He was teasing her again, trying to make her feel flustered. She wasn't going to fall for it. She still needed to get used to this. The situation was still a bit confusing. She didn't know what she was going to call him. She didn't know if she was in a relationship with him. She couldn't tell, and she didn't know how she could even bring up the subject with Naruto. "You can't really leave with me?" Temari asked with emotion. "You don't have to reach sooner, you know." She offered him a smile. She really did want to spend some more time with him. "I can't," Naruto said with a shake of his head. "I'm not allowed to leave this village. I'm currently a flight risk, you see. Even now, I have got Anbu watching me," he said. Temari frowned. He hadn't said anything about this before. She hadn't even realized it. It had to do with the situation in Uzushio. She really wished they had come to talk about it, but there was not enough time. She had to go home. "Doesn't that make you angry? You are being constantly watched." Naruto shook his head. "Annoying, yes, but angry, no." Naruto responded in a calm tone. "It is a bit true that I am a flight risk, but that isn't the most important thing. I really wish I could travel with you, but I'm tied to this village." Temari nodded and went silent. She looked down for a moment before looking back at Naruto, cheeks with a shade of pink. "When will I be able to see you again?" she said a bit too quickly. Naruto was amused by the way she spoke. It annoyed Temari. She quickly got over her embarrassment and glared at him with a threatening look. Naruto laughed while holding up both his hands. "I don't know, Temari. But I will surely miss you. When I can, I will come to you if you can't come to me. We will talk then. I hope it isn't after many months like last time," Temari said. Naruto smiled, but didn't offer a response. He pulled her into a hug and whispered into her ear. "Have a safe journey, Temari. Don't worry about anything along the way. Although I won't be with you, someone will protect you along the way." Temari stared at him curiously before asking, "Was someone also watching me last time?" Naruto just smiled and twirled the blonde around before pushing her away. "I will be thinking about you when I visit the bar tonight," he said with a laugh. When Temari twisted around with a glare, he smiled. "Just messing with you." She stared at him for a moment but really didn't seem to believe him, even though she nodded. She turned away and waved her hand before walking away from the village gates. Naruto watched her leave before he turned away, hands inside his pockets. He hoped that Danzo didn't try anything. Perhaps he would be too preoccupied with his efforts to escape from the village to do anything. Then again, Sasuke had done a great number on his forces, so he was unlikely to do anything dangerous at this point. "Looks like you're doing well," Jiraiya said as he appeared beside Naruto, his eyes facing the direction Temari had disappeared off to. "We need to talk," he said in a hardened tone. "It sounds serious," Naruto responded in a calm tone, feeling the seriousness coming from the Sannin. The man almost never used such a tone when talking to him. He could use it, but it was never really directed towards him. This was perhaps going to be troublesome. But Naruto didn't need to prepare for anything. He was always ready for anything. Besides, after that conversation with Tsunade, he was expecting things to get heated up. "It is," Jiraiya said with a nod of his head. He placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder and they disappeared in a swirl of leaves. They appeared atop of the wall that surrounded the village. The Sannin sat down while casting a narrowed glance towards the silent Naruto, who was staring down at the village with a look of indifference. "What is this about?" Did you ever go to Uzushio with the Sandaime? Jiraiya asked, in the same tone he had been using when he started. His eyes were narrowed, never leaving Naruto. The blonde turned to face the Sannin with nothing but a raised eyebrow. That was about the only reaction he could give the Sannin. He had gone to Uzushio with the Sandaime Hokage, but he wasn't going to tell that to Jiraiya. It was nevertheless something that this person wasn't supposed to know. Then again, if he was asking, he didn't know anything but merely working on suspicions. I cannot answer that. Can't or won't. Doesn't matter either way, Naruto said with a shrug. There are a couple of things that I did with the old man and he told me never to tell anyone. Whatever you say or have in mind, I'm not going to answer that question if it's something that I told the old man that I would not tell anyone. The old man didn't tell his secrets, and he was going to do the same. It was only fair and perhaps it was now convenient. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes dangerously. I'll assume that you went to Uzushio, but what did you see in the village? Was it revived when you went there? He demanded answers from Naruto. I care for you, Naruto, and I don't want to suspect you of anything, but if you refuse to answer questions, this village will have no choice but to use force to get you to answer the questions. It is no longer just about you, but the very security of this village is under threat. And that is where we draw the line, huh? Naruto said silently. Regardless of what you think or believe, I cannot answer that question, sensei. If you think using force is the only way you can get answers from me, you are free to do so. I won't fight you. I have no desire to do so. However, I still won't willingly give out any information. Jiraiya frowned. Even if that information could help us protect the hidden leaf. Protect it from what? Uzushio. Naruto was silent for a moment. He suppressed the urge to snort. Uzushio has no reason to threaten Konoha. Perhaps if you are assuming I am also a threat to Konoha, then I can understand. I do have all the reasons you can have to see the people of this village destroyed and suffering after what they put me through. He shook his head. But there is no such desire in me. I don't really like holding on to hatred. I am already miserable. I'd rather not make things worse. Are you saying that Uzu isn't a threat to Konoha? That isn't my conclusion to make, Naruto said calmly. What did you do when you got to Omegakure, sensei? It appears that the wheels have suddenly come off just after you returned. I am curious. Nothing, but I am worried that Nagato might bring destruction, Jiraiya said in a firm tone. At this stage, I can't tell what you will do and that worries me. He paused. What did you say to him when we went to Omegakure? You had some time with him before I came to the tower with Konan. Naruto adopted a thoughtful look on his face before shrugging carelessly. Just greeted a fellow Uzumaki, but nothing much was said. Perhaps he may have said something about the fact that both of us were trained by you, the blonde said. If you are not going to take me to Anbu chambers to force information out of me, I have a date with ramen, sensei. If you decide to come for me while there, just wait till I'm done eating. I would rather not have to fight over my spoiled meal. He jumped off the wall, leaving Jiraiya alone after saying those words. Jiraiya sighed. Well, he hadn't expected Naruto to leak anything. Even so, it hadn't gone exactly as he had imagined. Naruto was still impossible to read, and his nonchalance about the whole issue made things worse. He was certain now that Naruto had gone to Uzushio before. And he was perhaps familiar with the village. Even if he wasn't familiar with it, he had some connection with it. At this stage, if Nagato was connected to Uzu, then it was possible that both Nagato and Naruto were familiar with each other, and that represented a depressing possibility. What Naruto could do, then Nagato could do. Kumo. Yugito stepped into the Raikage's office with calmness about her, but she was really nervous about why she was being called today. She was almost certain that it had nothing to do with a mission she recently did. This had to be something serious, and it bothered her. It hadn't been one of the messengers who came to her, but one of the Black Corps who came. It was usually something serious, and she really hoped she wasn't in any serious trouble. She hadn't done anything wrong, but in the shinobi world, you could never know. You wished to see me, Raikage-sama, Yugito said to A. The Yondaime Raikage was sitting behind his desk with Mabui standing beside him. A nodded his head and looked up to her. Months ago, you had a sparring session with a certain Uzumaki, he said. Yugito nodded her head. She hadn't said anything about it because she hadn't felt it was important. She hadn't even been asked of it. She knew he was Uzumaki and the village seemed to have a problem with the Uzumaki, but Naruto hadn't seemed like a bad person. He was actually a very delightful young man. Yes, Naruto, she said. You remember him well, the Yondaime Raikage noted with a stare. Well, he does leave an impression on you, she said with a slight shrug of her shoulders. Besides, he is another Jinchuriki, so you really can't forget that. He wasn't like a normal shinobi who she could forget after meeting in battle. He had proved to be strong even, so he was someone to remember. A nodded. We have a problem with the Uzumaki clan and very soon, you might have to face him. Tell me about his skills, he said. Yugito nodded her head and did so. I'm going to send shinobi to bring him here, by force if necessary. If something happens, I can always put the blame on Konoha. You will observe from a good distance along with C. It is likely that they will fail. When that happens, come report to me and I will make my demands to Konoha. Regardless of what happens, you are not to interfere, is that understood? Hi. Raikage-sama. Hidden Leaf, Uchiha Compound. Sasuke's eyes flashed coldly when Naruto walked towards him in his little training ground. He hated the fact that the blonde could just walk into his compound just like that. The blonde was standing in front of him, an amused expression on his face. It did nothing but make him scowl and feel the urge to attack him, but he stopped remembering their last battle. Well, he wanted to test things now. He was not the same person as before, yet this was not the time. He was preparing himself to face Danzo. What a nasty look, Naruto stated in a calm tone. Are you still angry that I chopped off your wings when we last met in battle? He asked with his head tilted to the side. Sasuke glared murderously, but Naruto's amusement only seemed to return. He clenched his fists and then responded. What do you want from me, Naruto? I have actually been watching you since you returned, Naruto said calmly. Your activities with Danzo, it has been a curious thing to see. I guess Itachi could not completely wipe out that hatred within you. Regardless, I know that Danzo is planning to flee the village and you are going to attack him, with the blessing of Tsunade, of course, he said. Sasuke narrowed his eyes dangerously. How do you know that? Naruto merely shrugged indifferently. That isn't the important part. I already know, you can't change it. What you should be asking me is why I am telling you this, he said. When Sasuke just stared at him, he spoke again. I'm actually getting bored in this village, and so I am going to join you. You will fight Danzo and I will handle his remaining Foundation forces. No, Sasuke said in a hardened tone. I don't want you anywhere near him. This is my fight, and I will not let you interfere, he said. You don't have a choice, Naruto said in a light tone, a complete contrast to Sasuke's. If you don't want me there, you can just disable me, although, even with the Mangekyo Sharingan, I doubt you can. But if you want to try, you are welcome to do so, the blonde said with his hands stretched wide. Sasuke seethed silently. He was thinking of killing the blonde. Well, if he does allow Naruto to join and then shoots him along with Danzo, it could be a friendly fire and the Anbu would be watching to absolve him of any wrong. Things were troublesome with the blonde around the village. If he was not around, then Sasuke could do as he pleases without having to worry about someone he couldn't figure out. I will permit it, he finally said. Naruto smiled. I will see you then, he said before showing Sasuke his back. A second later, he disappeared. Uzushio Gurun looked at a group of Uzumakis in a training ground. They all had their chakra chains out, learning to use them in conjunction with barriers. The man leading the training was a person called Naruhiro, one of the mysterious Uzumakis in the island. The Uzumakis were truly gifted people in terms of chakra. There was always something special about it and above all else, they possessed strong life force. This was truly a village of abnormal people. Orochimaru would certainly relish using them for his experiments. She sat next to Haku who was watching the training. Her eyes glanced at the training ground for a moment before looking at her partner in crime. What is happening? She asked. Things are moving, Haku said in a quiet tone. Gurun frowned. I don't like the cryptic tone, she said. I know that although I handle the black core, there is still some much darker things that I don't know. The village's intelligence people don't even report to Yoshino. You hardly see them, but I know they are all Uzumaki. One of them is rarely in the village. He is always reporting to His Majesty, Haku said. I forget that sometimes you don't know everything that happens in the village. Well, then again, your own job is already too much given everything that you have to do. But I am quite certain that very soon, you will have to worry less. He said. Why is that? Kumo and Iwagakure will probably be fighting each other and that means they won't have time to focus on us. Well, the people here were thinking of making it happen but someone beat them to punch. Either way, it works well for them. But we might have a Konoha problem, Haku said with a sigh. The hidden leaf. Gurren asked. What about them? They had hosted him and she thought everything was handled clearly. His Majesty says that Konoha suspects that Uzushio is allied with Omegakure and that the leader of the latter is probably up to no good. They might be thinking of using force to get the information they need, Haku said. We must expect to see Jiraiya in the village very soon. I will be ready for him. Haku shook his head. Even I know that he isn't someone both of us can handle, Gurren-san, the ice user said in a calm tone. We don't want to start trouble with Konoha. But if they do use force, we will have to block him. Do you know how this village managed to stay under the radar for so long? What? The Uzumaki did indeed scatter across the elemental nations but they never went to Konoha because the leaf couldn't be trusted either. It wasn't just paranoia. There were reasons to believe that the leaf was a possible enemy of the hidden whirlpools, Haku explained lightly. A barrier was erected around the village. It was a special kind of barrier that messed up with all your senses, much like genjutsu. You can't see it and it only affected those who didn't have Uzumaki chakra signature in them. If you came here, dujutsu or no dujutsu and you were not Uzumaki, you wouldn't see anything. It would just be ruins. Perhaps when Jiraiya comes around, they will use the same barrier. It was deactivated once His Majesty decided to grow the village and allow other people to come into this land. I don't know but Yoshino says you shouldn't worry about it. He is likely to come through the gates. Gurren frowned. I always knew that these people could do some crazy things with seals, she shook her head. I have seals in my body, is there something I don't know? Haku smiled. Don't be too suspicious, Gurren-san, he said calmly. The seals you were branded with do exactly what you were told they do. We are comrades, do you think they would lie to you when you have an important job? You were trusted with a job that some people had thought that shouldn't be given to an outsider but an Uzumaki should deal with it. But Yoshino said you could be trusted. And the Emperor. You are here, aren't you? Haku said with a smile. Yoshino might look like he runs everything and indeed he does run a lot of things, but no one serves Uzushio without His Majesty giving his blessings. You are here because His Majesty decided that you could be trusted, not because they thought you wouldn't misbehave because they could blackmail you. They don't want people who want to work for them because they are forced, you do everything willingly. And that is how you give your best for this village. Gurren hadn't actually thought that there was some mistrust. Haku didn't keep things from her but there were still things that she didn't know about the village. She knew that there was technology that was acquired from the hidden snow but she didn't know what it was for. Things were even being secretly moved from the snow. What is being built on the east side of the island? Haku smiled. Do you want to see? I wouldn't ask if I wasn't curious, Gurren said. Come on, Haku said, standing up. I will show you what is being built and why the village remains closed. Certainly, the elemental nations would try to invade us if they knew what we are building. He paused for a moment. Have you met Karen? Outskirts of Konoha, Danzo cursed when he sensed multiple chakra signatures on his tail. Nothing was ever going to plan. Had Hiruzen been alive, he would have been blaming him for this. But he still should have known that things would get to this point. He should have known that they would not allow him to just pack his things and go. Still, he had moved things secretly. He had thought at least he would have been able to move further away from Konoha without anyone knowing. Danzo stopped walking along with his 2 agents. Tsunade Anbu were still hidden but he could sense them from the trees. He looked up from the ground trying to count them, but his eyes snapped towards a tree branch just above him when Sasuke appeared in a flash of lightning. Did you really think that I was going to allow you to leave, Danzo? Sasuke asked, with his Mangekyo Sharingan, glaring down at Danzo with nothing but pure contempt. Yes, this was the man he needed to kill. If Naruto tried to make a move on the War Hawk, Sasuke was going to burn the blonde with the flames of Amaterasu or shoot an arrow through his chest. He wasn't going to allow anyone to stand in the way. You truly are a disappointment to the memory of Itachi, Danzo said in a cold tone, his narrowed eyes staring back at Sasuke. So are you a disappointment to the memory of the Nadaime Hokage? Naruto suddenly said, appearing below the tree Sasuke was standing on. The blonde had his hands folded across his chest. That voice shocked him. Danzo hadn't sensed the blonde. He had just appeared there as if he had no presence about him. It was truly a frightening thought. Such a presence was required for an assassin, the ability to mask your scent, the sound of your heartbeat, your entire existence. I was not expecting your presence, Naruto, he said. I grew bored sitting around, Naruto said with a shrug. The Anbu are also watching to make sure I don't even make an attempt to run away from the village, he said before taking a step forward. Now then, can you stand aside so that I can slaughter all you men? I have been frustrated being chained up like this. Your men will do to release my danger, the blonde said. Slaughter. Sasuke looked surprised hearing those words. The blonde had never looked like he was the bloodthirsty type. Then again, when has the blonde ever displayed her interest in anything? Naruto shrugged. Don't take my words literally. I like to mislead people at times, he admitted casually. That aside, saying it like that is a little imposing than saying, I am going to defeat you all. Danzo had his eyes narrowed. No doubt, Naruto was going to engage his men. With everything, he didn't think that Naruto would actually work with Sasuke. The very idea had been ridiculous. Unimaginable. Yet, it was now apparent that it was going to happen and Sasuke was going to face him. I guess there is no way to avoid this then, the Warhawk said removing the bandages on his forehead. Naruto tilted his head to the side. Oh, Shisui's, he said with a smile. Well, no need to look at it in marvel, let us do this. The moment those words left his lips, a dose of killing intent oozed off him, causing the Eni shinobi to surround Danzo. The Warhawk glanced at Sasuke for a moment before looking at Naruto. He smiled inwardly having seen the look on Sasuke's face. Naruto was going to go after his agents and the Uchiha would not interfere, even if the Anbu were watching and Naruto was losing. If anything, it was apparent that Sasuke would rather see Naruto dead than alive. He laughed inwardly. What a treacherous world he had created. But did Naruto know about this? Danzo had no illusions, the one with a dangerous mind was Naruto. There were still many things that the blonde held to himself. He won't be coming after me, Danzo said in a calm tone. Sasuke won't be moving in until you have apprehended Naruto. Do this quickly, he ordered while stepping away. Hi, Danzo-sama. The NE forces saluted their master. Naruto was still the first to make a move. The blonde disappeared along gusts of winds and flashed between the circle the shinobi had formed for Danzo. He was standing there, both hands stretched out, 8 kunais held firmly. As he twisted clockwise, his feet dancing on the ground, the NE agents also twisted around to face him. The kunais were coated with wind chakra before releasing them. The first kunai sped through the air in blinding speed, heading straight towards the back of the NE shinobi who had yet to turn around. The kunai pierced through the shinobi's neck, bursting through his throat, leaving a gaping hole that caused blood to gush out. The first one was a test shot. The 7 that came out next were hurled through the air simultaneously. 3 shinobi managed to dodge the fast-coming projectiles while 4 were not so lucky. As they twisted around to face the blonde, they were welcomed by kunais that pierced through their throats. All 4 fell down the ground simultaneously, while Naruto stopped spinning. A NE Kunoiki flashed behind him with a Kodaki on her right hand. She swung the blade in a downward slash, trying to cut across his back. Simultaneously, another lunged towards him in the front. He was slightly above the ground, his right foot cutting through the air as it sped towards Naruto's face. Naruto reacted in lightning speed by falling forward, knees bent. He tumbled forward, avoiding the flying kick that blasted past him, and the slash that nearly cut through his back. He was quick to get on his feet twisting around smoothly as he turned around to face those who had attacked him. He didn't get to make any move as another masked man lunged at him from behind. When both his feet touched the ground, his right punch heading towards the back of Naruto's head. The blonde caught the punch with his left hand without even looking back. His grip was firm, enhanced by chakra. He held out his right hand, forming his wind blade. When 3 masked men lunged towards him, all holding swords, Naruto remained motionless for a second before letting go of the man behind him by pushing him back with force to force him off balance. Naruto bent his knees when all 4 were in range, and then his upper body while facing the ground. Flashing wind sword. The sword extended, invisible to the naked eye. Naruto then did an anti-clockwise twist that occurred in the blink of an eye. A second later, all four dropped to the ground, cut in half and dying. When Naruto straightened up, a brutal kick slammed into his face, causing him to slide backwards for a couple of feet. When he stopped, the blonde watched the woman who had kicked him darting towards him with a long sword held with her hand. When she got near him, she flipped it to her right and swung it horizontally from her right hand, aiming it just below Naruto's shoulder. The blonde reacted by taking a single step forward while holding out his left hand. The single step was enough to bring him an inch closer to the woman, and his outstretched left hand caught her right hand on the wrist. There was enough pressure on his fingers to stop the blood flow. He did not waste time driving his wind blade through her chest. He cancelled his sword blade as he pushed the woman away. That's 9 down, 11 more to go, he said to himself. Come now, we don't want to keep your master waiting. Answer, Naruto cut 'em all. It hadn't been difficult. Then again, he hadn't expected much from Danzo's people. They were still just normal shinobi. There was nothing special about them except for their loyalty to Danzo and lack of emotion. Once done with them, Naruto flashed behind Danzo. That didn't do it, he said to the war hawk. I am tempted to lunge at you, he said calmly, yet a small smile played on his lips. Danzo narrowed his eyes behind him but was forced to look directly in front of him when he sensed a spike of chakra. Sasuke was standing directly in front of Danzo, and within the line of Naruto. His imperfect Susanoo was already out, a bow and arrow held in motion. I will not let you do that. The arrow was released by Sasuke in blinding speed. It pierced through Danzo's chest, and went towards Naruto, only missing him by a whisker. Naruto didn't seem concerned, he had a raised eyebrow. He then disappeared and appeared not so far away Sasuke. He took a couple of steps forwards before placing his hand on the Susanoo. So this is the Susanoo, he said before smiling. You tried to kill me, didn't you? He asked calmly. But Sasuke could respond. Danzo was getting up, he looked completely fine. Naruto turned to face the war hawk and glanced at the right hand, multiple sharingans clearly visible. My wife would certainly love to have that right hand of yours to experiment on it, he said. No doubt there has been some use of Hashirama's cells there. He then glanced at Sasuke. I won't forget that you tried to kill me. Yes, you will surely die one day. He disappeared after mouthing those words with cold eyes. Kumogaku the Yondaim's Raikage's eyes snapped open when his senses kicked in his sleep and he shifted to the side of his bed. A kunai pierced through his pillow just after he had rolled. On the other side of the bed, there was another shinobi, but who tried to stab him. But caught the kunai between his fingers, it drew some blood before it snapped and lightning shot through his body before shocking the would-be attacker. He didn't need to turn around to deal with the shinobi who was on the other side of the bed as another shinobi appeared and apprehended the man. A looked furious at this before the lights were flicked on. He hadn't killed the man who had stabbed him, he wanted him alive. He was going to make sure that they paid for this. They would regret even trying to make an attempt on his life. How did they even manage to get past you people? He roared furiously. There was someone outside who got our attention and we had gone after him but he managed to elude us, the shinobi said in fear, afraid that the Raikage would turn his fists towards him for not being here soon enough. Incompetence, the Raikage shouted, slamming his huge hand on the bed. Get out. After a couple of moments, he appeared, dressed properly in the living room, still looking infuriated. Who would even dare make this pathetic attempt on his life? It would have succeeded if he hadn't been quick to wake up. And he said he had guards but a little thing and they all leave their posts. Idiots. He needed better people to guard him at night. Oh, wait, he had been the one to say he didn't need people guarding him exclusively. He hadn't thought that there would actually be an attempt on his life. When was the last time someone even attempted to kill a Kage in his sleep? What was happening in this world? His first thought had been Uzushio. He couldn't think of anyone who would want to kill him but when he walked into the living room, he saw a Wagaku forehead protectors and frowned deeply. Are they really from a Wagaku? He asked dangerously. It wouldn't be a new trick to dress assassins in another village's colors in case they failed to do the job. Someone was always blamed. A had seen this trick many times, so he would not be fooled easily. A Wagaku looked like an ally at this time, but you could never be sure about anything in this world. Every village was always trying to fight for its interests. The kunais are from a Wagaku, but we cannot confirm anything at this point, one of the shinobi said. Go confirm it, are ordered. I want answers. If they are indeed from a Wagaku, Onoki will regret even thinking about this stupid decision he has made. He would surely regret it. Although he might not declare war with a Wagaku tomorrow, he was certainly going to do it in the near future if it is indeed Onoki who sent those people. He would not let this slide. Someone's head had to roll for this action. But the situation was delicate. There was still Uzushio, Gakure and Konoha to think about. It was dangerous to make a move now when he didn't even know anything about the former village. The Yondaime Raikage sat down and waited for his people to bring him the answers he wanted. After an hour, he grew impatient and decided to go the interrogation cells himself. When he arrived at the chambers, the shinobi were heavily bleeding and damaged, but it didn't care. What is taking so long for you to break them? He demanded. They confirm they are from a Wagaku, but won't say who sent them, one of the shinobi responded to the Raikage. They say the order came from Iwa but appear to be incapable of answering some questions. Why does that matter? A demanded. They are from a Wagaku and that is all I want to hear. It doesn't matter who knew and who didn't know about it. Shall we stop or continue? Continue, the Raikage said. If they die, they die. Konohagaku. The agreement had been that Naruto would hire some people who would try to kill him, but Naruto no longer had the appetite for it. He didn't have any desire to cut through worthless shinobi who could not even force him to fight a little seriously. Perhaps this was because he had spent much time sparring with Jiraiya that he had forgotten how to fight weaker shinobi. That aside, fighting weak people really did bore him, and a continuance to it was nothing but just an annoyance. Naruto looked up into a tree as he sensed Naoki's presence. Cancel the order, he said. It is not necessary anymore. Besides, there are many people who would want me dead. That's a pity, Naruto said. What about Sasuke? He did try to kill you and if given the chance he will try to do it again. Let him do as he pleases, Naruto said carelessly. He will surely try to kill me again. I am nothing more than a threat to his childish dreams. It is only that he doesn't know that I don't care about what happens to Konoha. Either way, he will surely die. Naruto stared at Naruto for a long moment before shaking his head. Konoha won't be happy. The hidden leaf is irrelevant, Naruto said with a shrug. Besides, if he tries to kill me again, I have more reasons to step on his throat and end the Uchiha, he said. The Uchiha isn't a big picture. What is happening with the search for Kabuto? Still no luck, Naruto said with a shake of his head. Ever since Orochimaru died, he has completely disappeared without any trace, he said. That wasn't what he wanted to hear. Kabuto was a child of Orochimaru. He knew too much information and could do a lot of damage with it. His knowledge regarding the things he learned with Orochimaru could also prove to be vital. Gurren had some information but not sensitive information that Orochimaru and Kabuto worked with secretly. He needed Kabuto to be either dead or working for him. If you can't find him, then stop the search, Naruto stated. It is just going to be a waste of time and effort. Eventually when he wants to be seen, he will make an appearance. You are planning on using him, Naruto said. Wouldn't that be dangerous? Someone like him cannot be trusted. Your opinion was not requested, Naruto said sternly. When I want it, I will ask of it. Naruto merely smiled. That's rather cold, Your Majesty, he said. There is still nothing regarding Zetsu. But we have Madara's hideout watched for any sign of movements. So far, there is nothing. That is a nuisance that really does trouble me, Naruto said with a frown. Madara cannot return to this world. We have already done enough to stop his crazy plan, but now the driving force eludes us. He won't be hidden forever, Naruto said. As long as you remain a Jinchuriki, he will have to come to you. I don't want anything that will be of nuisance to my dream, Naruto said with a slight shake of his head. That is for me. Naruto nodded and threw a bingo book towards Naruto. Naruto opened the mark page and found an image of himself with a ranking of A. What a pitiful ranking, he said with a frown. Well, it matters not. You certainly don't want people assuming that you are all powerful. This situation could dangerous. You are going to die, so it doesn't matter much anyway, Naruto said with indifference. The team is ready to come in as soon as they hear a loud boom. Naruto shook his head. No, wait for them to send a message. Or wait for at least a couple of days before arriving. We don't want unnecessary questions. What more did you want from me? There is also Subaku no Temari, Naruto said. That is a matter that isn't your concern, for now at least. Leave it as it is, and don't do anything I didn't tell you to do. You can leave the village now and go back home. Your presence is no longer necessary. Naruto said before deciding to take a walk back to the village. I think I will stick around for a while, Naruto said. I've grown to like this village. There are so many things that are happening that just catch your attention. Your interactions are also somewhat amusing. Naruto glanced towards the redhead for a moment with a narrowed look, but he didn't say anything. He just walked away. Hokage office. Tsunade looked up when Naruto walked into her office. She managed a small smile as his eyes came to contact with hers. Since he returned from his training trip, this had been his first time coming to her without being called. Naruto, she started calmly. I wasn't expecting to see you, she said. Naruto tilted his head to the side. You mean just after our last conversation, he said. Tsunade frowned. Yes, she admitted. What can I do for you? Are you looking for a mission to keep you from getting bored? I think I can find something that will be suitable for you, the Godime said a bit too happily. Naruto didn't remind the woman that she had barred him from leaving the village. She was probably just too eager to do something for him that it didn't register that he couldn't take any mission that would have him leave the village. Missions within would likely be chores, and that was for Genins to do, not him. He'd probably refuse to do them if he was being assigned them. I didn't come here for a mission, he said. Tsunade blinked. What is it? I'm just coming from the Forest of Death where I was doing some meditation. I was then attacked by some unknown shinobi. I think I left a corpse buried in the ground somewhere there, he said in indifference. I don't know where they are from because they didn't have anything on them to identify them. He said. You were attacked and you were that indifferent. Naruto shrugged. It was nothing serious, he said. Besides, situations like this help train your senses. You need to be active at all times. I think some of them escaped. I didn't bother chasing after them because they were probably not going to give anything. Where did this happen? Just behind the place we had the preliminary round of the Chunin exams, Naruto said. Well, I guess that is that, he said calmly. Wait, Tsunade stopped him from leaving. How did things go with Temari? She asked carefully, not to sound excited about the idea. She was hoping that things had gone well. The blonde hadn't said anything about it before leaving, and since she had some interest in this, she was naturally curious about how well it might have gone. How did things go? Naruto asked. What things? Tsunade frowned. She wasn't dealing with an idiot who failed to read between the lines. She was even surprised that he didn't even twitch when she asked the question. No wonder Jiraiya said that he couldn't read anything from the blonde. The fifth Hokage could only answer the question. I thought you were getting along with her, she said. Naruto shrugged. Meh, he said with indifference. She is a good friend, he added. Is there something I should know? Tsunade shook her head. Not now, at least. Naruto smiled towards the Godime. I see, he said. Why are you smiling? Well, you are a Sannin all right, he said. Forgive me for saying this, but you do know how to lie without leaving anything for someone to read. To answer your question, things were smooth. I'm not sure where they stand, but they were certainly interesting. I think I might give her a call in the near future. Why not soon? Tsunade asked, while ignoring the fact that he had nearly fooled her into thinking that there was nothing. There is much to do in the immediate future, Naruto said with a small frown. I'm still a flight risk in this village, and the situation with Uzushio hasn't been solved. It does weigh down on my mind. Until it is solved, I have the burden on my shoulders. I'm sorry to put you through this, Naruto, Tsunade said apologetically. I hope that we are able to solve this situation very soon. It will be better for everyone involved. But it all depends on Uzushio. We don't force him to do anything. I don't want to suspect you of anything, but just be patient for a little while and all the cloud will be lifted off you. Naruto nodded and turned towards the door. Before he could open it, it opened as Shizune walked into the office. Naruto smiled towards the black-haired woman. Shizune, he greeted with a charming smile. You really must let me take you out sometimes, he said. Go play with someone your age, Naruto. Tsunade exclaimed. Naruto shook his head. A pity, he said before walking past Shizune, but not before flashing her one last smile. She returned the smile before closing the door. She turned her attention towards Tsunade. Why did you do that? This is the second time you did that. Tsunade stared for a moment. Don't tell me you were actually interested in going out with him, she said. Shizune shrugged. It wouldn't have been bad. I hear he is a charming young man who knows what he is doing. At least that is what Jiraiya-sama says. And you just took the word of a pervert. Once more, Shizune shrugged. I get lonely at times, she said. Later that day Naruto was sitting alone in his dark little corner with a couple of bottles before him. This was going to be his last night living in this world. Death. Ah, it was something that everyone feared. Even murderers didn't want to deny. Everyone wanted to live, but the Bayo inside of him would probably say that human life was just fragile and that for the Uzumaki, death was nothing. Well, they got to live far longer lives than other humans. They could outlive anyone in this world and they didn't have to experiment on their bodies to get this done. The red hair was a symbol of their life and once it was drained, it changed its color to signify that death was closer. He smiled when Anko walked towards his table with Kurenai, Asuma, and Kakashi, along with another woman. I figured you'd need some company, the snake mistress said to Naruto with a wide grin. Naruto smiled. You figured right, he said sitting up slightly. I was honestly starting to wonder who would keep me entertained tonight. You know, it does get lonely in this dark corner. Kurenai raised an eyebrow. Didn't you just choose it? Naruto put on a sly smile while watching those eyes of the Genjutsu mistress. How exotic, I certainly wouldn't mind waking up to have your eyes stare at me, he said quietly. Anko whistled before shooting a look towards Asuma. I think you have competition there, Asuma, she said grinning. Kurenai-chan might be leaving with him by the end of the day if you are not careful. Anko. Kurenai warned. What are you saying? Anko shrugged carelessly before turning towards Naruto. You will try right. Naturally, Naruto responded with a wide smile. There are few women who entice you to stare at them as she does. But I didn't know Asuma was already playing in this field, he said staring at Asuma. Asuma shook his head. Nothing from Naruto surprised him these days. The blonde might be young in age, but he had the mind to play with the adults. Perhaps Anko was right, if he wasn't careful, he would find the blonde behind Kurenai. That look before, he could see that the blonde admired her. It was probably something just fleeting. Asuma decided against responding to Naruto to speak about something comfortable, for him at least. You didn't answer her question, Asuma said, glancing at Kurenai. It is a good place to hunt for prey. I get to survey all that is happening within the place while sitting like this, Naruto said while staring at Kurenai. When she glared at him because of his response, he laughed. Of course, I am joking. I just stole a line from Anko. I believe that is something she would say. Then why? Naruto shrugged. I like being alone, he said before turning to Yugao. He stared at her for a moment with his tilted to the side. Anbu, he said. So, Kakashi, I didn't think you dated real women. I have always thought that your only woman was that orange book of yours. What was her name again? I'm quite sure I heard you whispering her name when you were asleep one day during a mission. Anko burst out in laughter. Yugao is his former subordinate in Anbu, he was her captain. I should have figured as much, Naruto said with a shake of his head. Kakashi smiled. You don't have to look so disappointed, Naruto, he said. Naruto shook his head and turned towards Yugao. He then offered her a smile. I have known your hair for quite some time, Yugao-san. I'm quite certain that you have seen some expressions on my face that not even Jiraiya has seen. It is such a pleasure to finally see your face. Yugao returned the smile. A pleasure to finally meet you in person, she said. You two know each other from somewhere? Anko asked while Kakashi's visible eye narrowed slightly. She is an Anbu, and I am a Jinchuriki, Naruto started in a slow tone. So, yes, I do know her. As I do with some Anbu. Kakashi was honestly surprised by this. He was almost certain that Naruto was lying about the last part. But he was surprised that Yugao had watched Naruto. He didn't know about it. She probably did it after he left. Still, he hadn't known. If he hadn't known and he hadn't heard Tsunade saying something about it, it was more or less likely that the Godime Hokage didn't know about it as well. Had they just revealed a secret just like that? The others wouldn't know, but he certainly would since he knew what happened in the Hokage's office. It isn't what you are thinking, Kakashi, Naruto said to the silver-haired Jonin. And if it is, please keep those thoughts to yourself, senpai, Yugao said with a sweet smile. What was I thinking? Kakashi said. Probably that I have had a crush on Yugao, and now that I have grown, she has finally decided to put away her mask and return those feelings. Naruto tilted his head to the side. Or something like that. Iwagakure Onoki frowned deeply reading the angry letter from the Yondaime Raikage. He got mad and concerned with each passing word. After he was done reading the letter, he slammed his fist on his desk and shouted some curses while releasing his killing intent. That was his plans gone the drain after that letter. He was beyond furious about this. How could he work with the Raikage when things were like this? Not long ago, he had told the Hidden Leaf that he was willing to go to war with it, and now, he had to worry about Kumogakure. Certainly, if he attacked the Hidden Whirlpools, he was going to be attacked by Kumogakure, and Konoha would try to defend the former. He shouldn't have said those words then, but he hadn't known that this would happen. Who could benefit from this situation? Onoki needed someone to blame someone for this because he hadn't given the order for his shinobi to try to kill the Raikage. Someone had done it and was trying to blame him for it. It was either his shinobi had betrayed this village or they had been manipulated by someone. But the Raikage was confident that they were his shinobi and had said he would send their heads so that he could confirm. It wouldn't make much of a difference nevertheless because the man seemed confident that they were his shinobi. If they were his shinobi, who could have given the order? Someone would have to roll over this. Maybe it was either Konoha or Uzushio. He wouldn't put it past the Leaf to have done this. They certainly had the dojutsu to manipulate someone through genjutsu. Onoki was going to blame him, but what would he base his accusations on? This was indeed a frustrating situation that had ruined things for him. He was certain the bastard who plotted this was currently dancing in joy over this. Curses, if you don't start talking now, I will start assuming that someone has declared war on us, Kuretsuki said calmly. At this moment, she could only assume that Uzushio would be the only village to do something like that. She didn't think that it would be the Hidden Leaf. The Leaf couldn't afford that. But she didn't think so with Uzushio. Nevertheless, village had many reasons to wish for war with Iwagakure. Regardless of what, they would just crush anyone who dares threaten the security of the beloved village. Onoki turned his eyes towards Kuretsuki and then spoke in a subdued tone, but the anger was still clearly audible and visible in his eyes. It has indeed happened like that, he said. Kuretsuki frowned. Azu. Onoki shook his head. The worst-case scenario, he said in a slightly gloomy tone. Kumogakure has declared us an enemy after 2 of our shinobi were caught trying to assassinate him, he said. What? Kuretsuki jumped to her feet and stared at her grandfather. Are you serious? She asked. Do I look like I am joking? Onoki asked in a flat tone. Well, considering everything, this could also be one of Kumo's plots. The village has always been aggressive. He wouldn't be surprised if they tried to demand something from them. It has played the same trick with Konoha and would probably do it with them. But Iwa would not bend over as Konoha did. They were in a situation to defend themselves against any attack that might come over them. Kumo had 2 Jinchurikis, but so did they. They would not be intimidated into doing anything, especially when Onoki wasn't even guilty of doing anything. Who is framing us? Kuretsuki asked. Surely someone was framing them because there was no one in this village who would have given such an order. Her grandfather hadn't done something like that either. I don't know, Onoki said. But we will find out, and whoever is behind it will know my anger. I will not forgive this and I will not forget it. But at least for now we can be content knowing that Kumogakure will not attack first. People have seen many wars, they won't likely do anything carelessly. Any village that makes the first move, depending on the conditions, might face destruction. If we attack Uzushio-gakure, Konoha will defend it. The moment we do so because of what is happening, Kumogakure will do it as well. Sunagakure is weak, but if Konoha is attacked, it will also mobilize. Without the Hidden Leaf, Suna knows it has no chances for survival. In this scenario, we are getting crushed in all fronts. We can't have that now. Kuretsuki was silent for a couple of moments. This was certainly a dangerous situation that was certainly a road to life and death. They had to be careful or else they would face destruction. And this was all because the Uzumaki had decided to come back. She blamed the Uzumaki for this. Had it not been for them, they wouldn't even be at odds with the Hidden Leaf. The wars of the past were, but because of this, the roads were clashing once more. What are we going to do? We are going to see who is responsible for this, Onoki said. In the meantime, I will meet the Raikage. If I have to go to Kumo to see these shinobi while they are still alive to question them, I will do so. I don't want anything to happen between the two villages before the issue with Uzushio is as it is. Isn't that dangerous? Kurotsuki asked. Kumo could try to use this to kill him as well. Or maybe the person who was framing them would even try to kill both cages when they meet if they do meet in a neutral location. It is, Onoki admitted. But we cannot run away from it. This is the only way we can temporarily close on matters and avoid war with Kumo. Who knows, although I highly doubt it, we might end up solving this issue if we meet, he said. What happened to those people who hired? They haven't come back, but I am not expecting them until the next couple of days, Kurotsuki said. But Kumogakur has already put him in their bingo book as an A-rank shinobi. It doesn't mention much, but it's still something else. They do say he can control some of the Kyuubi's powers. That is worrying, Onoki said. Because the Kyuubi is the most powerful, its Jinchuriki becomes the most powerful if he can control its powers. Let us hope that he doesn't have full control. I am more interested in his personality and mindset. For now, as long as he doesn't know his father's jutsu, he isn't a threat. Why his mindset? It gives us an image of what is his opinion regarding Uzushio. If he is willing to jump into the defense even if Konoha isn't going to do, we have a problem of a Jinchuriki on our hands, Onoki said. That is a possibility we have to face. Kurotsuki looked thoughtful for a moment before speaking. I could just arrange to meet him to discover more about it, she offered. I don't know how I would get in contact with him, she added. You can just go to Konoha, Onoki said. We haven't had any diplomatic relations with Konoha. I can send you there to discuss more about the current issues. Jiraiya was here to inquire about our viewpoint. I haven't heard from you. While there, you can get your chance to meet Naruto. It will also give you a chance to see about the Leaf's security and what they are doing in this time of tensions. Ichiraku Ramen Naruto stared at the food before him with an unblinking look. He was certainly going to miss having this ramen. There was just no way he was going to find a place that prepared better ramen than Ichiraku. What was he going to do about this? Perhaps this was more than just food. Sitting here like this held some sentimental value for him. This place had been the only place he could eat without worries, the only place that didn't overcharge him if it bothered selling to him. He had spent many days with the third Hokage in this place. Maybe it was more than just the ramen, but the memories it represented were pure. Is there something wrong with the ramen? Ayami asked, staring at Naruto with a curious look on her face. Naruto lifted his eyes towards Ayami and shook his head. He then smiled before taking his chopsticks. I was merely thinking. Sometimes I let my thoughts wander a little, he said. What were you thinking about? It obviously had something to do with ramen, Ayami said. She was at least glad that there was nothing wrong with the bowl she had served him. It would have been the first time that Naruto complained about food after being served. He always enjoyed his meals. If an emperor offered you a chance to open your shop in his land and also serve your food to him personally, would you take it? Naruto asked, his eyes staring at Ayami. Ayami tilted her head to the side before shaking her head. That would be something else, but I can't just leave Konoha for no reason. I'm not a Kunoiki, so there is no loyalty question, but if I am going to leave Konoha, it has to be for something worth more than just wealth. Naruto smiled. What is more valuable than wealth? Happiness, Ayami said. Good answer, Naruto said. He turned towards his food and started eating calmly with a small smile on his lips. Once he was done eating, he placed his hands inside his pockets and slowly walked through the streets of the Hidden Leaf. The air was a bit tense, but it was certainly different from the atmosphere that greeted him when he was younger. Perhaps his showing in the Chunin exams, his association with Jiraiya had caused some changes, but Naruto really didn't care about it. He certainly had no desire to buy these people's love with anything. When he arrived in his apartment, he closed the door behind him and released a loud sigh. He was being watched, but at least things were safe in this place. He walked towards the couch. He had shared a special moment with Temari. She was probably going to hate him, but there was really nothing he could do. He could not risk anything, or else there'd be a situation that could potentially undo all efforts placed to make sure that things happen in the way he wanted. Naruto settled down gracefully and placed both his feet on his coffee table before closing his eyes. Boom. Naruto's apartment burst into a loud and powerful explosion that was heard almost throughout the hidden leaf. The explosion sent debris flying into all sides with crimson flames burning through the place within seconds. The apartment block was immediately surrounded by a squad of Anbu which did put out the flames. They had been quick to act knowing that the apartment belonged to the Hidden Leaf's Jinchuriki. If something happened to him, there was the chance of the Kyuubi breaking free. And they would have an irate Hokage who would be demanding answers. The village was immediately put on lockdown after the explosion. Tsunade flashed into the scene along with Jiraiya with Anbu watching over. She had a deep frown on her lips. She was only glad that there was no damage on the village itself and there was no sign of the Kyuubi. But she was afraid that something might have happened to Naruto. The explosion that occurred wasn't a small thing. She had felt it in her office. She was honestly afraid, but she could not break down when the village was like this. There was a chance that there could be an intruder in the village. There hadn't been any sign of anything like that, but you never know. The Godime was standing on the roof of the building nearby when an Anbu appeared before her with Naruto's burnt body in his hands. The Godime slammed her fist of the roof, shattering it in anger. She immediately disappeared towards the Hokage tower with Jiraiya following her along with the Anbu. The Toad Sage felt something pang within his heart. He felt like a failure seeing Naruto like that. He quickly rushed towards the Anbu holding Naruto after they made their way towards the top of the Hokage tower. He examined the blonde with a pained look for searching for a pulse. There was none. And everything stopped. Jiraiya felt like he needed to sit down because after a couple of seconds, his world seemed to start spinning. There was no pulse. Naruto was dead. Once more again, he had failed to protect those he loved. He had failed to protect Naruto from his young age, from the abuse of the villagers, and now this. Some of these people were probably going to celebrate his death or just be indifferent to it. Naruto hadn't done anything of noteworthy for them to remember him by. They were just going to say that the child who held the beast that killed their loved ones was finally dead. Jiraiya was going to be sickened if things happened like that. He was going to be infuriated with them and he would not bite his tongue. Naruto was dead. Jiraiya felt dead. How could have this even happened? Did it have something to do with the attack on Naruto? Did it have something to do with that attack? But they didn't know who did it. Could they just assume that one of the great nations planned this attack? Jiraiya couldn't figure anything out. He wanted to cry, but he held his tears. This wasn't a dream, this was a nightmare. This was a cruel reality. After a miserable childhood, is this how someone was supposed to die? Jiraiya, tell me this isn't really happening. Tsunade's pained voice brought Jiraiya out of his thoughts. The Toad Sage turned towards the Slug Princess with a saddened look. Naruto was dead. He wanted to tell Tsunade something else, but there was nothing he could say. The truth was pain. What was even worse was that they had been dealing a lot of pressure on Naruto in the past days. He hadn't been allowed to leave the village. They had been suspecting him of something else. He could not have died with a smile. Jiraiya looked away from Tsunade and turned towards Naruto's body with unblinking eyes. Was this really the reality? Was Naruto really dead? Jiraiya, Tsunade shouted. Tell me something. Jiraiya still couldn't say anything, and this time around, he couldn't even face her. Tsunade slammed her foot down, nearly exploding in anger, before stalking towards the Sannin. She pushed him to the side and knelt before Naruto. She attempted to look for a pulse, but there was nothing. She stood up and glared at the Anbu. What the hell happened? We don't know yet, the Anbu said. You don't know? Tsunade asked with a bitter laugh. Then why are you still standing here? Go find out what happened. If someone did this, I want them found. No one leaves and comes into this village. We are on lockdown until I say otherwise. She shouted furiously. Hi, Hokage-sama, the Anbu saluted, disappearing. Hospital. Tsunade hadn't immediately taken Naruto to the hospital because she knew he was a Jinchuriki and there were dangers there. Still, she was curious why the Kyuubi hadn't been released. With Naruto's death, the seal was supposed to lose its power and then it would be released. It would have been a disaster if that had happened. Last time around, it took sealing the Kyuubi to stop it. This time around, who would seal it? Who would even be able to hold it down to even get to that point? But there hadn't been any of that. Naruto's body was laid on the bed within the hospital. It was just her, Shizune and Jiraiya within the room. There was no one close by around them because this was something being done in secret. She certainly wasn't going to let other villagers know that Konoha's Jinchuriki was dead. They would certainly be happy knowing this. But with what was happening between Kumo and Iwa, there was no fear of an invasion. Even so, Tsunade had lost someone who was truly precious to her once more again. She walked over to the blonde with her hand glowing light green. When she tried applying chakra over his chest, marks formed across his entire upper body. She didn't step back when the marks appeared. My chakra can't touch him, she said with a deep frown. She removed her hand and the marks disappeared. Jiraiya stepped forward and touched Naruto's chest and tried applying his chakra and the seals appeared once more. He could not make of what he was seeing. He couldn't understand the damn seals. It wasn't just one seal. There were multiple seals that were just tied together making just one complex web of seals that he couldn't even understand. The frown on his lips deepened. One of the seal is blocking chakra from entering his body, he said. When you channel chakra, the seal immediately activates. But I don't know what it does or what they do. I don't know anything, he said with frustration. Can't you release them? Tsunade asked. I can't release something I don't know, Jiraiya said with a shake his head. Tsunade mirrored Jiraiya's frown. This just means we can't see what happened to him and how he died. Although his body is burnt, the burns are slight and would have healed soon. They were not what killed him. We will take his blood and try to see if it was poison that killed him. But if it was poison, would there have been a need for the explosion? It could have been used to conceal the evidence. The flames burnt everything that was in his apartment, Jiraiya said. There was no progress anyway. This could not simply be a dead end. Not now, not ever. Someone planned this and they would get to bottom of this. Tsunade swore in her grandfather's name that she would find out who plotted this. But so far, there was no evidence to even suggest that someone had planned this. There hadn't been someone in his apartment. Someone was watching it and there was not a report of anyone breaking into Naruto's apartment. The Anbu were also positive that Naruto had been alone when it happened. This was just a strange thing that almost made her think that this could have been suicidal. We need to get Inoki to read his mind to see what happened. That's not going to work, Jiraiya said. What were you thinking, Haim? Tsunade stared at Jiraiya with an expressionless mask on her face. Naruto appeared happy. He seemed fine. I can't say he was miserable. Despite smiling, he always admitted to being miserable and he often spent time alone just staring into the empty space ahead of him. I could never get into his mind to see what he was saying. Tsunade nodded. I just thought, what if it was suicidal? I think someone did this, but we have nothing other than that attack on him. Even so, that is nothing to go on by. He admitted that this wasn't making him happy. And he wanted it to change. What if he had been lying and saw no end to his misery before deciding to end it all? It could explain why he has these seals that keep chakra from entering his body. If we can't even enter his mind, it makes things even more suspicious. Jiraiya refused to think that way. That would mean that they were responsible. It would mean Konoha was the one that killed Naruto. Besides, Naruto wasn't the suicidal type. Something had to have happened. Naruto didn't take his life, Haim, the Toad Sage said confidently. Uchiha compound. Sakura strolled through the Uchiha compound, heading towards the main house where she knew that she was going to find Sasuke. Her beloved crush who has been doing nothing but ignore all her attempts to see him. Last time she had been here, he told her to leave and didn't want to talk about being rude, but she still did not give up. She would not give up on her love. She would love Sasuke for life and nothing was going to change. Of course, it did pain her when he was unpleasant towards her, but her love for him was enduring. She would endure this rough patch. Sasuke would come around and they would be happy together. At least she did dream about this. She hoped that this time around, he would at least see her. She was here on painful news that he had to know. Even though he spent his time around the compound, Sakura was quite certain that Sasuke knew about what had happened to Naruto. Even the whole village knew something had happened. There hadn't been anything from Tsunade. She hasn't said anything, but since his apartment exploded, there was the thought that something happened to him. There hadn't been a sign of him since after all. Sakura was honestly saddened by this reality. She had been rude and unfriendly to him. Although it was something of the past that they had seemed to get over, but she could not help but think about it now that he was dead. Naruto had been her teammate and he played his role perfectly. Sasuke had at times forgotten about her in the heat of the moments, and it had been Naruto who covered her, who protected when she needed it. She was saddened for his passing. She truly was. When she arrived at the main house, she called and pounded at the door until Sasuke opened the door and stared at her. What? What? Sakura was surprised. Naruto is dead, Sasuke. So? Sasuke asked. He was just cold and indifferent. Sakura shivered at this. How could he be like this at times? Naruto had been their teammate. He was their friend. No one could accuse him of having been rude and unfriendly. He had been pleasant to everyone. It was the least she could say for Sasuke. If he died, she was probably the only one who would cry. The others certainly didn't care much about him because of the way he had been before he left the village. Excuse me. Naruto is dead, so what? What do you want from me? How can you look so cold, Sasuke-kun? Naruto was our friend. He was our teammate and he saved our lives a couple of times. How can you be so indifferent? Sakura didn't raise her voice. She wanted to do it, but she loved Sasuke too much to do it. I love you, Sasuke-kun, but I was sad that you left Konoha. I would have left with you. Now, I am just disappointed. You tried to kill Naruto before, but I thought that it was just because you really wanted to go. Sakura shook her head. We are going to be with others later tonight at Naruto's favorite eating place. If everything I have been thinking about you isn't just delusions, you will actually come. I really hope you do come, Sasuke-kun, she said with a sad smile on her lips. The following night Jiraiya and Tsunade were out drinking together. They didn't do it often, but this felt like the appropriate time to drink and talk about how miserable their lives were. Jiraiya had been sad in his life many times, but fewer moments were much more miserable than this. Do you think we drove him to this, Jiraiya? Tsunade asked in a miserable tone. Since he came back, we did nothing but told him that he was a flight risk. I barred him from leaving the village and he couldn't do any mission because of it. Do you think we could have handled things better? Do you think he will forgive us? I don't know, Haim, Jiraiya said in the same tone as Tsunade. I really don't know. He smiled bitterly. I spoke to the Toads to ask about Naruto's name in the contract, but they said that it had disappeared. I thought they would say that his name would have still been there. Naruto's body was still in the hospital. They hadn't moved him. Perhaps they wanted to think that he would come back to life. Tsunade was even thinking about talking to Tsunagaku to ask about their kinjutsu in reincarnation. Maybe they could do something to bring him back to life. Should we inform the Uzumaki and Tsunagaku? I think Gaara will want to know about this. There doesn't seem to be anything to do now, Jiraiya said. Nothing in his body is going to work as long as those seals remain in place. How do I start with the letters, Jiraiya? What do I even say? That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.